There was a time when marketing BFSI was looked in a very rudimentary fashion. Today, it's become very integral. And how is marketing keeping pace with that so that it can also match the expectations of the consumers, which is spread across so many genres?
How do you become customer-centric? Versus earlier where banks were more about, I want to sell XYZ. I have X product and if you're eligible, you get it. To now saying, what do you need and how do I customize it for you and how do I anticipate your needs and build it for you?
So in BFSI, the yardsticks, like you mentioned, has shifted to trust and quality when it comes to conversations. So how do you measure the outcomes across the full funnel, like you mentioned earlier, when it comes to near real time and that goes beyond click-throughs?
Well, when you look at your plans, you look at your input impressions, you look at your VTRs, you look at your views. I think these are great media buying efficiency metrics. What has shifted is to seeing these metrics in conjunction with what I call it as output and outcome.
Hi Kedar, it's nice to have you over here with Campaign India. So I wanted to understand from you that now that you've handed over the mandate to Dentsu X, beyond efficiencies of consolidation, what new thinking or disruptive approaches are you expecting from this partnership? And how exactly are you going to go ahead and measure it?
For us, making the consolidation of agencies and bringing them to one particular agency across the group has been a big shift. And there were many things that were behind making that decision. I think one of the biggest areas was how do you really bring in a shift which is a lot more outcome-based planning versus just doing channel-based planning. And the moment you start looking at building an outcome-based planning, then you need a lot of depth in the way you're able to look at data and then use that data to informing your choices. We really like the way Dentsu kind of built it up and their ability to kind of bring in causality and correlation to the outcomes that we were trying to bring in. There are agencies who are good at doing performance marketing. The others are good at probably doing top to mid funnel marketing. We feel that that's all collapsed into just one funnel, which is full funnel marketing, and the journeys are so intertwined and interconnected that one has to orchestrate the entire full funnel in a way that best works for the consumer. So it's just one thing. There are so many things when you start looking at very simple mental model of 1 + 1 should be greater than 11, your sponsorship model changes, your spot buy rate changes, the way you're dealing with overall different mediums changes, the way you're thinking of measurement changes. So I think the second big thing was that one Kotak, how do you really bring in the power of one Kotak where your 1 + 1 is greater than 11? And that's where Dentsu had a big role to play, and that's why we wanted an agency which could do that. And lastly, we're also trying to drive a big shift in terms of how technology intersects marketing.
There was a time when marketing BFSI was looked in a very rudimentary fashion. Today, it's become very integral. And also, like the way you are attired, you have given a very personalized, a very different, a very contemporary persona to BFSI. And how is marketing keeping pace with that so that it can also match the expectations of the consumers, which is, spread across so many genres?
I'm glad you asked this question. I think it's a very deep-rooted perception that one carries about certain sectors. We feel that marketing for fashion is probably cool, or an e-com is the new buzzword. BFSI is probably at the juncture of bringing the best of the worlds of CPG and e-commerce. And by that, what I mean is, at the other end of the spectrum is how do you become customer centric, versus earlier where banks were more about, I want to sell XYZ. I have X product and if you're eligible, you get it. To now saying, what do you need and how do I customize it for you and how do I anticipate your needs and build it for you? Find it, Indians are no more asking for permission, they just want access. So that's a big shift So if that has to happen, then you need to be customer centric, and that's where the role is changing. And as that happens, you also have to speak in their language. You have to be relevant to them, and you have to resonate with them for them to feel that it's a brand for me. And it often starts from marketing, whether it's the way you represent your consumer in a boardroom, or the way you carry yourself outside from the values you represent for your consumer. So I think it's a lot different now. You're no more saying, "Are you eligible for getting a home loan?" You're basically saying, "All right, you seem to be doing great in life, and there are these possibilities that you have. How can I play a role in your life?" And that's where it's so exciting.
And you seem to be in the right position to make that change, given your background, where you've worked with CPG brands, you've also worked with Amazon. So, given that kind of a background, I'm sure you're familiar with acronyms like MAUs and DAUs. So, in BFSI, the yardsticks, like you
Yeah,
mentioned, has
yeah.
shifted to trust and quality when it comes to conversations.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, how do you measure the outcomes across the full funnel, like you mentioned earlier, when it comes to near real time and that goes beyond click throughs?
Yep. There was an era where marketing was measured primarily on the depth of the brand value that was getting created. Call it a brand equity, brand love, call it certain attributes of the brand, or just top of the funnel metrics. From there, it kind of shifted completely to scale metric. And when I say scale metrics, MAU, DAO, sessions, people landed, clicks, so on and so forth. So those were the scale metrics because the business model was rooted around that. Earlier was more around brand metrics, which was rooted again around how the brand is and how trustworthy the brand is and how is it kind of helping me solve my needs. To a world right now, somewhere in the early 2020s, I think there were a lot of efficiency media metric which started becoming the only yardstick to measure even the top funnel metrics, which is scary. For example, when you look at your plans, you look at your input impressions, you look at your VTRs, you look at your views. I think these are great media buying efficiency metrics. What has shifted is to seeing these metrics in conjunction with what I call it as output and outcome. And when I say output of these metrics, the output of these metrics are really the impact it has had on the brand health, which is the metric which we all have learned as basics of marketing. So instead of just looking at impressions, instead of just looking at VTRs, start looking at brand health lifts that you've been correlate it to. And the outcome metric to that is really how do I feel about the brand. So if you just look at the top funnel now, from impressions to VTRs to just getting to a particular site to saying, what is it that I feel about the brand? How is it that I feel about the brand? And then finally, what will I do about it with the brand? That's really the top funnel that one has to see. That's the evolution that is there across, and so is the case for us at Kotak. The second is the mid funnel. As I say, mid funnel and the bottom funnel are gifts of so-called growth marketing, which probably took us by surprise in the last decade or so, plateauing now and realizing that, okay, you need brand marketing again and you can't just do performance marketing. I think those metrics are still again very, very input focused, where you look at CTR. CTR is a great example of saying that it's a mid-funnel metric. And then we all take pride in CTRs. We're at 0.5, industry is at 1.5. We are kind of hitting it out of park. We are at about 3.5%, 4%. That's a great CTR metrics. Then there were engagement metrics. Then there were fan base metrics, right? Now that's just not enough. Those are again great, probably good buy efficiency for a media agency. You need to see that in conjunction with the output metric. And let's just take an example of Solitaire. It's a premium banking program. Now, if you would have just looked at it, you would have never gotten to core outcome and output metrics, which is to say, is the consumer relevant for this segment and for this program or not? A lot of people are coming on the site, landing on the page that we've created or the form being filled. Is it relevant? And then if it is not relevant, then it's not really a great outcome. You're not going to be able to sell them, or you're not going to fulfill their needs. They will come with a certain expectation. You'll not be able to fulfill their needs. So the input metrics are more efficiency metrics. The output would have been the quality of a lead, or a qualifier which says that, okay, hey, this quality of lead is good and affluent enough for it to be processed further. The last one, which is the bottom funnel, which is often seen as efficiency of cost of acquisition and ROAS and ROI. In a e-commerce parlance, it used to be incremental lifts to OPS, incremental lift to GMS, incremental lifts to acquisition, so on and so forth. I think that kind of shifting to seeing it from a lifetime value, the ability to be connected with the consumer over a longer period is much higher now than, and much easier, I must say, because of the digital journeys that are there and the way you could probably handhold them throughout after having had one relationship. Looking at it in conjunction with the lifetime value that you're able to create or not should define whether the input metric or even CAC is good or not. So you might acquire or you might serve a consumer at a much lower cost, but then you'd be able to serve them only once, is not a great outcome.
Banking is now increasingly becoming omni-channel, and the true test of successful banking is when a customer doesn't need to really go to the bank, right? Now, keeping that in mind and looking at the amount of tech tools, the data mapping, how is it that you actually use this data mapping to identify some of the potential consumer needs solitaire? I believe that came out of the research that a lot of the HNI consumers started feeling disconnected and underserved by their existing banking partners. And that's why the invitation only solitaire product came into being. So how is it that you use maybe tools like data mapping from your existing client base or social listening tools, and then identify which part of the maybe the top funnel, using that as a linchpin to identify this is the right kind of products that we need to roll out, this is the right kind of customer base we need to go out with, and then also ensure that there is a throughput so that it's not that at the initial stage we're just touching that customer, creating a lead, creating a conversation, but there is incremental brand lift, like you correctly mentioned, that happens consistently.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a lot of things, and Solitaire is a great case. I take a lot of pride in the way Solitaire program we were able to shape it, launch it, and the way it's been received by consumers. Very interestingly, one very profound statement came in from one of our existing customers, and he said, "Look, when I go and travel from my office work, I actually get a lounge in the hotel that I stay, and that's what the company does for me. But when I travel with my family, I don't get that lounge access in their hotel. My true success marker is when my family is able to enjoy what I get to enjoy when I am at work or when I travel by work." And that was so profound. Now extrapolate that to when I travel abroad, will my family get that lounge access? Extend that to, any shopping that I need to do abroad, will there be any forex charges to that, and will I be charged for that or not? So if you think of it, all of these are centered around just one single insight to say, true success marker is when my family gets to experience what I do in my life. So that became like the core point. Now, having done that, when it comes to speaking one-on-one, I think that's where technology has really helped us. How do you really carve them out and break them into different clusters and still kind of not see them as homogeneous, but treat them as more one-on-one? We would have spent a lot of time earlier in doing a conjoint, then building a cluster, still having a little bit of a subjectivity of what those clusters should be called, and then relying on an external agency to be able to do that with a fact check saying that it'll take us 6 months, 8 months. I think the way some of the LLMs are evolved to handling this and giving you those segments in a click of a button, we were amazed at the output and the accuracy of those outputs that we got as we were segmenting them. So when you have a program, you are probably more likely to selling that program if you talk about these 3 things first, because these are the pain areas for the consumer. Your program has about 10 benefits. If you have 10 benefits and you have to only pitch the first 3, which one would those be and in what language? I think that's what the whole segmentation exercise helped us. From there, our plans were all backwards of that. So we didn't believe in taking one communication to everyone. There were about 80,000 such videos that were built. And what's mind-blowing is these 80,000 videos have all different scripts. They're all backwards of what you are. This is about a script which is dynamic, which is completely backwards of what personality you are, what your needs are, and hence a program is being pitched to you in that way. I think that's where that is insightful in itself, because you're not saying what solid program is, but you're saying what it will do to you, and hence how it fits your need. Imagine creating 80,000 TVCs, just not possible. Or probably it would have costed you a bomb, and you would still not have been able to serve it. So I think that's where a lot of tech has enabled us in understanding and also serving the consumers. And then there are a lot of last mile things that also is helping us. We often struggled on. It's very difficult with so many humans in the chain to standardize a particular pitch for a particular program. And when you think of it, see it as you're talking to an affluent, where you want the pitch to be in a certain way, delivered in a certain way. What we did even there was we created all of these. Instead of a physical brochure, we actually have a video. And that video is again dynamic. So the way the product features are explained to you are in the form of a video. So when my relationship manager goes to a prospective client, they basically have a video for the client. And they create it. Imagine this, they're just going to meet them, they just go into a portal, put their details, a video comes out, they download the video, it's on their WhatsApp, they go, they play the video, instead of just handing over a brochure. So I think that's where there is a complete unison of what Solitaire stands for.
For a lot of people, banking products by nature are complex. You said 80,000 TVCs. Do you see there is a possibility of creating similar kind of TVCs for your other products, especially as you go to the masses? Because at the end of the day, so on one hand, you have the HNIs, right?
Yeah.
But Kotak has always looked at financial inclusion.
Yes.
Kotak wants to be the Aam Aadmi's banking partner.
Yep. So, look, I think the first principles are clear, right? Like, solve the consumer's need, and hence try and understand the consumer as much as you can, and basis that present a solution that's most likely to be picked up. If technology is able to do that at scale, then that's the first port of call. And if that's something which the consumer also prefers, then it's a marriage. But if the two are not able to solve for the outcomes that you're trying to drive, then you obviously find another model. Banking has a huge base with very little cross-selling. And if you see commerce thrives only on cross-selling. If you were to bring principles of cross-selling into BFSI, then you're essentially relying on technology to be able to do that. And the way we are trying to do that is to say that every email that goes to you in your journey, every transaction that you would have done with us, or every purchase that you have done, and a post-purchase communication has to be extremely personalized to you. We call that life cycle management, CLCM. So there, I believe being able to do, using technology and using the models that we have created now, we can create at scale in few minutes million videos, all customized. So it is so easy. You have an Excel, it has all the data, it kind of churns the data, identifies a pattern, thinks about you as an individual consumer, makes a video for you, and able to flash it. Whether it's a credit card, whether it's a home loan, whether it's a personal loan, whether it is certain investments, and that's how we will kind of keep rolling it out. So it's one-to-one at scale possible. We are relying on it. There are certain complex products. When I see this, and you're right, not everyone has a relationship manager, but for me, the biggest relationship manager is the own channels that we are communicating with consumers. Your email has to be a relationship manager. Your notification has to be a relationship manager. Your WhatsApp message that comes has to be a relationship manager. They should all be helping you solve your challenges that you have with a bank or any financial need that you have. There are certain complex products which still need aiding, which still need a little more explanation, sit down, talking, so on and so forth. And especially when I look at rural or tier 2, there I think the approach has to be slightly different. Just broad communication or even personalized communication is not enough. Trust is earned when you participate with them, and trust is not earned only when you communicate in their language, right? Like often we think that if I've spoken a vernacular language, so maybe the consumer will start liking me, but they want participation. So when you say participation, it's important that I'm there in those cultural moments. And those cultural moments are equally important, and I need to make them feel that, I'm as much a part of you and I understand it. Versus for a Gen Z, probably I need to be on their feed. So those distinctions are there, and one has to understand both the spectrums. We are also doing those hyper personalized local events. So the offers that the alliance team that we work with brings in for the ground are very different than what we put up for the metros online.
So you spoke about rural the activations that are there, on-ground activations that are there. Now, interestingly, since 2020, digital ad spends have gone up almost 11x. Probably outstripping TV and print as well. And Kotak's digital ad spends also, if I'm not mistaken, is now 60% of its entire marketing mix. Do you see that now going even further up, or do you think that it's going to be in the same ballpark area?
Our approach is really outcome backwards. When you start looking at from an outcome strategy, then you then go back and say, hey, where is it that you're likely able to drive this outcome? And for example, when you go to the rural, the outcome, like I said, trust will be built in by participation with them. Then you have to invest into those local events that are there. As much as you would want everything to be done on digital for certain different kinds of outcomes. What is defining our entire media output or media plans that we are putting in? In that context, yes, digital has seen a far higher share than what it used to be in the past. It probably will further grow. It's an outcome of finally the signals it has been able to give us back, and we are able to kind of build on that, and hence know and be a lot more controlled in the way investments we're making. We are not digital only, we are digital first, digital dominant. But yeah, there are channels which will continue to be important for us, and they will build. Naturally, because of the signals that digital is able to feed in and improvise our planning, I think we have a positive disposition towards leveraging that a little more than others, for sure. Yeah.
I hear you. So, the recent campaign that you had, and a big one that was Hausla hai to ho jayega, right?
Absolutely.
And that cuts across all swaths. So how are you building up on that, or will you create a fresh new campaign as we enter the festive season and also start a new year, calendar year?
If you're following the work that Kotak is doing in marketing, and the wide spectrum of campaigns and the depth and even the way they're being driven, each is so different. I think at one end is Hausla, and the other end is Solitaire. So when you see Hausla was a movement, right? It's like just zooming out to 60,000 feet and then looking at everything and saying that, okay, what's happening in India? And Indians today are, as we say, they're emboldened Indians, right? It's no more about an eligibility game. It was always about what is possible with banks. So that's the narrative that we wanted to bring in, and hence Hausla to Ho Jayega is a reflection of this emboldened Indian who's basically saying, just give me access, I'll figure it out. And don't be the gatekeeper who's going to say no. Be the one who's going to partner with me and then build that with me. So Hausla was a movement because the outcome was to shift the way people see at Kotak and in turn look at BFSI. So that is one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is precision and persuasion. So solitaire is about precision and persuasion, which is hence relying a lot on signals, relying a lot on, it's a small base. We're talking about what, 25 odd million affluent Indians. So the reliance on how well have I been able to understand you, how well have I been able to serve you, and measure it on a real-time basis. Because only when you're able to measure on a real-time basis is when your plans are changing. So that needed a very different way in which we approached a campaign in which we went about driving this. Very proud to say that ours is a measurement model which also gives you mind share shifts on a real-time basis and not just the performance metrics.
Thank you so much, Kedar. I mean, I got so many insights about how Kotak is actually working towards it. And while one always talks about marketing, one doesn't go more than the epidural surface. You give so much more deep, analysis into especially how Kotak is using, like you said, not just the entire full funnel, but dissecting every membrane of it.
Yep.
So that was really insightful. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk to Campaign India.
Thank you for having me here. Great conversation. Love the way we moved across the spectrums. It's very rare that you get to cover so many aspects. So kudos to you and your team for backing it up for everyone.
Thank you so much.